Hello and welcome to Your Quality of Life Healthy Alternatives. This is Dr. Christine Sauer, and I'm extremely happy today to talk with my good friend Lynda Sunshine West from the Sunshine Coast. Where else? Lynda is a wonderful woman, the queen of collaboration. She's a speaker, 11-time best-selling author, executive film producer, red carpet interviewer, and the founder of Women Action Takers. Now, Lynda, welcome to this show.
Thanks so much for having me, Christine. Excited to be here. And I love how you said from the Sunshine Coast. Yeah, because I'm here in San Diego, California. So it is not sunshine right now at this moment because it's still dark, but it is coming up. It's coming up.
I've been there. The climate is enviable. So if you can be in San Diego, even visit it, go ahead. It is wonderful. Now,
Yeah.
Lynda and I published together this book, Invincible Forevermore, and I can recommend it to anybody as I can any book that Lynda ever published, because that is a definitely strength of her. She can help books or make them so amazing that they end up on the Amazon bestsellers list, not just one, and in several categories, and for quite some time and internationally. So you got talents, girl.
Well, thanks for saying that. What's interesting is I never saw myself as somebody publishing a book, let alone my own as well as others, because I was never a writer. I didn't enjoy writing. And it just kind of morphed into that. And I think sometimes we set up ourselves for, the goals that we have in life. But if we do that too often, I think we miss some opportunities. And if I had really said, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing in 5 years, that I would have missed this opportunity.
That is very true. And most entrepreneurs take several attempts at different business niches before they actually see the opportunity that makes them thrive, fly, whatever you want to call it. And through your collaboration, I met many exciting other women that are wonderful people and amazing human beings just like yourself. So you're doing definitely something that you're meant to do. Now, it hasn't been always that way. And as you say, at age 5, you ran away and was lost for a whole week. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a very volatile, abusive, alcoholic household, like a lot of us. It's interesting because I didn't really realize how many people had grown up in the same type of environment as me until I started talking about it. But that environment was so toxic for me. So at 5 years old, I made a decision, and this shows how strong we are really at 5. Is I made a decision to leave the house, and I was gone for a week. Now, I just ran away to the neighbor's house, but for all intents and purposes, I was gone forever. That was my intention. And my mom knew where I was. And this is something that I think was very important for my future. What happened is I didn't know my mom knew where I was. So here I was at the neighbor's house and nobody came to get me. So what happened is something that locked really deep inside of me is that they don't love me. They don't want me around. They didn't come to get me. And my mom did know I was gone. So I imagine she's passed away, so I can't ask her this question. But I imagine that from my mom's perspective, she was letting me exercise my independence. Yet from my perspective as a 5-year-old, they don't want me, they don't love me, they don't want me around. And so that really, I think, shaped a lot of my life from that point forward. And I had this thought that, that my family, I'm so different. They used to make fun of me all the time. So I always saw myself as the different child. And again, they didn't want me around. So that really stopped me from thinking for myself. It stopped me from doing things. I had a lot of fear, and I became a people pleaser when I came back home with my tail between my legs and literally my head bent down. I wouldn't look people in the eyes for decades to come.
Isn't that many women especially, but also men that I talk to experience the same thing? They become people pleaser because we are told we have to please people. It's a good trait to put others first. And we are not told that that on the long run destroys us if we
Yeah.
don't put ourselves first and then serve others from the overflow. And I
Yes,
think that's a fundamental flaw in many educational systems.
I
How did
agree. And I think that I know like Les Brown says, fill your cup first and then give to others with the overflowing, just like what you said, right? And I think that's a very important piece that's missing. And oftentimes we never get that. We never really tap into that. So it's really important, I think, for us to tap into that earlier. And especially if parents are teaching their kids that, that's ideal, of course. But I heard this saying once and it made me laugh and laughing like not so sure about it. But that was that our only job as parents is to get our kids to age 18 alive. Like that was the only job, because we're going to screw them up anyway, and then they're going to need help. So I think not, whether you grow up in a really great environment or a really bad environment, there's still going to be some screwing up that your parents are going to do. So, then as an adult, time to go on your journey to find the people who can help you to realize that, okay, how do I take care of me first? I haven't been taught. So now I need to be taught how to do that.
That's an interesting question. How did in previous generations the people do that? They did not have any other people to help them besides maybe a pastor.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows
Who
what they did,
knows?
right?
So I agree. Every parent screws up their kids in some way, even if they have the best of intention. I know I was a mom, I'm a grandma, I do it. I've never met anybody that didn't. And at some point when kids grow up, they realize my parents tried the best they could at the time. And hopefully there are parents that don't even do that. And those are the really I don't respect them as much, let's put it that way.
Right,
But
right.
most parents try their best and they make mistakes, as we are
Yeah.
human. And as
Yeah.
children, we think our parents should be perfect. And the parents expect us to grow up perfect. And maybe we think we are perfect. And then at some point, we fall in the deep slump when the world holds us a mirror for the eye and says, hey, you're nothing special. Your parents may think that, but everybody else doesn't know you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I know I used to be a perfectionist. And I think a lot of that perfectionist, for me at least, I can only speak about myself, is that was because, when you grow up in an abusive environment, you're a lot of times trying to fix everything and make everything right. So that way the abuser won't come and get you or won't attack you or won't do whatever. And I think that that's what spurred on my perfectionism. My mom was an immaculate house cleaner, and she made sure that everything was spit shined, basically around the entire house at all times. And a lot of that, I know that was because of her fear of what would happen if it wasn't. And a lot of her actions were based on that fear. And what happened is that fear transcended down to me and my other siblings. Like we all blamed ourselves, that we always thought it was our fault that mom was being beat. All of us, we talked about this after my dad passed away. So we didn't even talk about this until dad was gone. And we discovered that every single one of us felt the same exact way.
Isn't it something we let ourselves control by the fear and the fear of rejection, as I learned from one of my mentors, Dr. Joseph McClendon III, licensed neuroencoding. Awesome. And he's a really good guy. And it's one of the major and main human fears, the fear of rejection. We don't want to be rejected. We'll do anything. We'll try to be perfect. And in the end, there will be always rejections coming our way. And we have to learn to deal with our fears. And I know that you at age 51 did an exceptionally interesting thing to deal with your own fears. Tell us about that one.
I did at age 51. So, I had lived all those years as a people pleaser, and I had so many fears. And those, again, stemmed from that childhood of having the fear locked into me. And at age 51, I decided to face a fear every single day for an entire year. And that actually came from, it's kind of interesting how it happened, is that at 51 also, I hired a life coach. And my life coach helped me to start to like unfold and see what was inside of this onion, this this hard shell that I had, and started to unfold to see, who I am, what I'm all about, what value I have, and all these different things about me. And that was in November of 2014 that I was done working with her. So in December of 2014, I had a whole month to myself, and I didn't make nearly as much growth as I did working with her. So that's why, on January 1st, 2015, I woke up that morning and I said, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to face a fear every single day this year. And so that's how it happened. And every morning I would wake up. The very first thing I would ask myself is, what scares me? And then I would lay in bed and I would wait until the first fear came up. And whatever that fear was, I had to face it that day. That was my commitment to myself. So I did that every single day. And it was incredible, the amount of growth that happened, the amount of confidence that I started to gain, how often I started speaking out and sharing my voice and getting myself in front of people, things I was terrified to do before. Absolutely. Because I had a tremendous fear of rejection, as well as the fear of judgment. The fear of judgment. Oh my gosh, that stopped me from living. That stopped me from living. But here I am now. Not that I don't have any fears, because I do, because I'm a human being. But how I handle fear and deal with fear now is completely different than it was before.
And I think that's really the secret to a successful life, because even a firefighter that is in corporation, or in whatever the English word is, of a successful and courageous person, they are afraid every time they go into a fire, and they have to be for their own safety. But they have the courage to overcome the fear, take the precautions they need to be reasonably safe, and do it anyway. And that's really courage. It's not having any fear. That would be ridiculous, because people that don't have any fear, and you can prove that brainwaves, if you don't have no anxiety, and your basal ganglia amygdala, where the anxiety is stored, have low function, you don't care. You do things like steal, rob the grocery store, you go across the street without looking. And that's not courage, that's just being irresponsible. So I love what you're saying. Face your fear, be courageous, and it's good to be afraid. And it's the thing how to deal with your fear. That's awesome. So what do you do to deal with the fear? Can you tell an example?
Yeah, exactly. Well, first, I want to say there's sayings about fear. There's different acronyms. I'm going to share mine in a minute. But the one thing that I started doing towards that end of that year is realizing that every time I broke through a different fear every day, because now I was exercising my fear breaking muscle, right? Every day, exercising that. So one thing I realized is that on usually the vast majority of the time, after I broke through the fear, it was a good thing and I felt good. So I started getting addicted to that good feeling of breaking through fears. And then I realized that I need to break through fears because I'm scared, because I'm scared. So I say, okay, if I'm starting to feel something that's anxious or whatever now, when I say, oh, that's just fear, I'm going to do it because I'm scared. And what happens is I enlarge the size of my comfort zone on a regular basis because I'm constantly breaking through fears. Now, some of the fears that I've broken through, they show up again and again and again. It's not like they disappear, but the next time and the next time it's easier and easier and easier. So I actually came up with my own acronym. I've heard acronyms like false evidence appearing real, or face everything and rise, face everything and run. There's a whole bunch of different acronyms out there. One day I was brushing my teeth and because I was looking at these different acronyms, and I said, false evidence appearing real. There is nothing false about my fear at all. Like, it is as real can be to me, as real can be to me. And so I said, you know what? One thing I noticed is that when my faith is weak, my fears are very, very strong. So faith erases anxious reactions became the acronym that I came up with, because when our faith is strong, our fear is weakened. It doesn't really disappear. Fear is weakened. And when our faith is strong, whether it's faith in God or faith in ourselves, Faith in others, when we have that faith, it's a lot easier to go forward. So one of the things I do when I'm experiencing fear is I'll ask myself the question, and I do say it in the third person, by the way. I will say, Lynda, how strong is your faith now? And I'll say, it's weak. I need to check in with my faith, and I need to just go do this because I'm scared. So that's one of the techniques I use. I have a lot of different techniques. So after a year, I created a whole bunch of different techniques to use to go through. That's one of them. And that one, like a boom, I check in, I say, okay, let's go. Let's do this because you're scared.
So it becomes a habit. Every time you notice that you're scared, this habit kicks off. Hey, I'm afraid. Here's what I'm doing to overcome this, and walk forward courageously. And for any listeners, Zoom is a little freezing up. It does it sometimes at their servers. And you wrote a book about your fears, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Called The Year of Fears. And after I was done facing those fears every day, my mentor, Greg Reed, he said, that's cool that you face the fear every day. What are you going to do about it? And I said, what do you mean, what am I going to do about it? I think facing a fear day is plenty. I don't need to do anything. He goes, no, you need to write a book, because who faces fear? There's a story there. People are out there that need to hear your story. Now, what was interesting is I was scared to write the book, and I was scared to publish the book, but I went ahead and did it again because I was scared. And then about maybe 6 months after I published it, I was attending an event, and there were about 300 or 400 people at this event. I was talking to some friends of mine, and I heard this woman come running from the other side of the room, and she was yelling, Lynda Sunshine. And I was, oh God, who is that woman? She's gonna cost me or what, But she said, I just want you to know, I bought your book in the first 14 pages, and I've already broken through 5 fears. And in that moment, I knew why I had a book. It was in that moment. And so I'm so glad my mentor, first of all, recommended it, and then he encouraged me. And then I went ahead and did the steps to actually write it. We all have a story inside of us. Are we sharing that story? And why not? If not, there's somebody out there who needs to hear our story, and they're waiting for us to tell it.
That is so true, especially when we are a little older, like most of us are, like 30 plus, let's be gentle, and overcame challenges. And it's a human thing. As humans, it's our life task to overcome challenges. We all have different challenges. And when we read, listen, or hear the stories of others, their challenges, and connect to that because our challenge is similar, suddenly that challenge is something that we can overcome too. And it gives us hope and the courage to go on, even if we are at the moment, as many of my clients are depressed or anxious themselves and don't know where to go, or they're stuck in the victim mode and they don't want to stay there because it's not a fun place to be. It's painful. And
yeah, definitely.
This is a wonderful opportunity to read those books with the stories. And I only can recommend all of the books of the Women Action Takers series that you're writing. And oh my God, there are so many stories in it. And I connected just a few women I met in this book, The Invincible Forevermore, Invisible No More. I was invisible myself. I was in a mental hospital and I overcame that challenge. For a doctor, it was a big thing. And there's other women that came through similar challenges, and other men that came through similar challenges. And when we read, hear, and connect to women and men that overcame challenges, it helps us to see that we're not lost causes.
Yeah. And one thing that's interesting, because you mentioned earlier about the women in the book, Invisible No More, Invincible Forevermore. By the way, Christine's story is absolutely amazing. Please get the book and read her story if nobody else is. And also, she has a YouTube video out there that tells her story on the Women Action Takers YouTube channel. But the thing is, one thing I realized is, through telling story, learning how to tell stories. I was never a storyteller before, and this is something that's been a newer development for me. And now I love it. It's funny how kind of like morphed into telling stories all the time now. But the thing I like to say is our relation points create our relationships. So when I tell my story and there's something I'm saying that resonates with you that you can totally relate to, that's really the start to a connection that creates a relationship. How we cultivate the relationship after that, completely different thing. We have that first, like, wow, I went through that too. I totally get this woman, or I totally get this man. So you have to reach out to them and see how we can create something together, or I just want to talk to them and see how they come through it. So it's really, again, important for us to tell our story, because it's through our stories that people will connect with us. And when they do connect with us on that level, especially when we're sharing the harder times in our lives, those challenges that we went through, and they went through that same challenge, they totally relate to us. So I think it's very important for us to tell our stories. And that's why creating the Women Action Takers Publishing was important for me, because I myself, my voice was stifled for decades. Decades. I didn't speak out. I didn't share my voice because I had that fear of judgment. And I was fearful that, that if I said something, that they wouldn't like me, people pleaser personality that came through. So once I started sharing my voice, I think more and more people actually relate to me instead of pushing me away. So it's really kind of interesting how that fear that I had was so completely opposite of the reality, completely opposite of what really, really happened when I started sharing my story and sharing voice. So yeah, get out there and share your voice, and make sure you read Christine's story, because it is incredible.
Thank you. And I must say, when I shared my story, and it was actually before I wrote my part in the book, had it on my YouTube and my website, not in as polished form, but it is still there, and you can watch me tell it in person. And the first time I put it out there, I was scared. And the first video I put on YouTube, and I talk to people that are still scared to go on video. They think they don't look, is my hair right? No, it isn't. Come on, it's not. I'm not looking perfect. I don't care. The first video I put on YouTube, it was awful. It's still there. I called it WTF/exercise. It shows me doing basic Tai Chi exercises at my girlfriend's house. It's miserable. And I knew it was miserable, and I put March music underneath, which totally doesn't fit. And there's a cat on the video. If you love cats, you can watch it. And what I did, it was the first video ever. So I said, what do I do with this miserable piece of video? And I said to myself, hey, put it on YouTube. So I did. I published it on YouTube, and I was scared. After a week, I went back and looked. And you know what happened? Nobody watched it. Nobody, no views. So I said to myself, hey, it doesn't matter.
Yep, yep.
And so
And
my fear was gone.
Yeah, oftentimes we place so much so much stock in those views and things, and because of those views, it moves us into a different state of mind. Nobody watched my stuff, nobody commented, and so we think there's something wrong with us. But yeah, that's the state of mind to have, is that, oh, awesome, nobody watched it, it's no big deal. It's not like, oh, millions of people are going to watch my video. I mean, that doesn't happen unless we get them to watch. Like, we have to actually reach out to people and make some of that stuff happen. But I had a similar type of experience. And so what I started doing, I don't know if you know this, Christine, but I have done over 4,000 Facebook Live videos. This is part of my breaking through fears, was doing videos. And what I would do is do a video, and if I'm ready to watch it, so this is a recommendation that I'm all of my clients, is if you're going to go watch your video, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take notes of all the things you did right. And I want you to take notes of all things you did great. I want you to take notes of all the things that you said funny. I want you to forget about all the rest. Just concentrate on the good stuff, because what happens is what we focus on is what materializes. So the more you concentrate on the funny things, the good things, the right things, then the more that you will do the good things, the funny things, the right things. So focus on that to get the result that you want to get. And then also, when you watch the videos, it won't be so painstakingly hard.
it really isn't that hard anymore after a while to watch you on video. You get used to it. At first you think, oh my God, my voice sounds terrible. And the faces I make, and then those get still faces, and you and then you probably touch your nose, and all those things that we're not supposed to do. Nobody notices. Honestly, nobody notices. I've been out there a lot. And if somebody noticed, well, say, hey, yeah, that's video. It's real.
Yeah,
Authentic.
exactly.
That's what it is.
Yeah, you go out there and do some videos. Just encouraging them to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, just do them. When you talk to people face to face, are you scared? If you are, do it. Start with that. It's easier.
Oh my gosh. And that actually, a lot of my fears that I broke through that year were about talking to people, because I had, my first husband told me I was stupid and ignorant on a daily basis for 2 years. And unfortunately, I was believing him. And then all the things that I heard as a child, unfortunately, I ended up believing all of that stuff about myself. And so, and he also used to say, people are only nice to you because they feel sorry for you. And I believed that. So when I would go approach people, I was terrified. What if they judge me? What if I say something stupid? What if I say something ignorant? I remember the most common thing I would say is that, what if they catch on to me about how stupid and ignorant I am? And so I didn't want to speak, to talk to anybody. And so that year was, tremendous for me, breaking through those fears right there. So now I approach people and I don't worry if I say something goofy or silly. I don't ever say anything stupid, and I don't ever say anything ignorant. I do know that. But I might say something that I shouldn't have said, maybe. but I am me. I'm showing up as me. And that was hard for me to discover, like, who it is. When I was as a people pleaser, I lived my life for others. And I literally would not make a decision unless I knew what you wanted to do, because then I would make a decision and follow what you wanted to do. And it was very confusing to live that for 51 years. I'm no longer that way. I have, blasted through the people pleaser. I'm a recovered people pleaser. And life is so much better when I make my own decisions based on what I actually love to do and don't love to do.
And that is wonderful, Linda. And I'm just interested. You say you had a bad childhood and people told you you're stupid, and that's why you become a people pleaser. Do you think that the opposite is also true? When you are told always you're special, you're better than anybody else, you become a people pleaser too, because you think inside you are not that.
Interesting. I don't know. I never looked at that perspective because I wasn't that person. But I do know this, that there are a lot of people who grow up in those bad environments that that stuff fuels them to be better. There are other people like me that stuff fuels us to believe in them, to believe that what they're saying is true. And so what makes the difference between those two types of people? I'd love to talk about, like, Oprah Winfrey. She grew up in a very bad, very, very bad environment. And look at her now. I mean, she's absolutely incredible, doing all these amazing things. And she grew up in a bad environment. What was it different about Oprah Winfrey, or her life, or her path, or people in her, along her journey, that you fueled her to do something different and to not be that person?
Wow, that is really fascinating. And I have to think about, because it entered my brain, because I was really the opposite. My parent always told me I was special. And I happened to be able to race through the challenges. I happened to be smart enough to excel in school and be the best. And then at some point I woke up and realized it's all not true. It's not true. And that led to my big depression. And I think some depressed people that grew up in a really great environment, too great, end up in the same spectrum as people that grow up in a bad environment. Just with the added problem that people like I grew up often think they're entitled. And that is an added burden, really, because nobody else thinks that, as we know. And that's a good idea that you put me to, Linda. Thanks for that. I have to explore that a little bit and do a video about it.
Yeah, and that is fascinating because I never heard from that perspective. So again, the opposite, thanks for that perspective to give me something to think about, because I love to think about those types of things, but I don't know about them until they come up. And it is very interesting. And like that saying that I said earlier, our only job as parents is to get our kids to 18 alive. And you grew up in a different environment where they were encouraging, telling you how great you were and all this stuff. And you went this one way, right? And I grew up in abuse and I went that way. And so what is it that really sets us apart, that makes us different? My father and my uncle, my dad's brother, they were the same type of people. And my uncle's kids, he had 6 kids, my dad had 5. All 6 kids had been in prison, in and out of prison, just like their dad. My dad had never been in prison, and none of us kids ever went to prison, and so it's kind of interesting how they grew up in the same environment. And my dad became this, while my dad was an abusive alcoholic, he was a brilliant man, absolutely brilliant. And so I know I caught some of that stuff, some of that brilliance, but I never
Absolutely.
believed it until after my life coach worked with me and helped me to see it.
That's wonderful. I realized after reading many books and talking to really a lot of people, and I always try to discover some of their essence. Of course, you can never discover somebody in truth, but you can feel people, and they all have an energy, and I love that. And we are all the same in the end. We have a different genetic makeup, we have a different physiology, we have different preferences, habits, and all that. But as people, we struggle with the same issues overall, with the same big issues. And I think as parents, we will make mistakes and screw up our kids. I agree with that. And I think in centuries past, parents just didn't think about it. They were happy when the children got to adulthood, because most died early from infectious diseases. Nowadays, maybe as parents, we overthink it if we want to do it right. I did. I know, as a parent, I read all the parenting books. I tried to do it exactly like, oh my God, and then it didn't work out.
Right.
Frustrating.
Exactly. So it is up to our kids, because they do have their own minds. And I was watching a video yesterday. It was very interesting how the mother wanted the son. The mother and the father have split custody of the kids, and so when the father came and brought the kid home, the kid didn't want to get out of the car, did not want to go with the mother, and she just like fought and fought and fought to get that kid out of the car. So I'm thinking about, and the kid he stood his ground. He was 14 years old. He stood his ground. He said, I am not going in there. And it was just this struggle, this constant struggle. And it was a long, long video. I kept skipping through it to see what happens. And it ended up, as I'm watching that, I'm thinking, what possible damage is this mother doing to this kid by fighting? She brought the police into the situation. The kid did not want to go. He was 14 years old. A 14-year-old, if he got out of the car and went into the house, he probably would have run away anyway. He's 14 years old. How can you control a 14-year-old unless you really got your thumb on them? But it got me thinking about how many things happened in my life when I was 14. How strong and brave was I? Well, not very, because I didn't run away. But how strong minded was I? You have a mind of your own. There's a point in our life where we're an adult in our mind, we're not in our age. And so I think that part of that, did that mom potentially create something within her kid at that age, at 14, that he's going to carry into his future, his adult life? And who knows?
And who knows if it's positive or negative? That's the interesting part, because some of those children that experience that, they have a trauma that they never get over and end up as victims. And others gain strength of it and say, hey, I stood up to my mother. I can stand up to everybody and to life and grow stronger of it. So I think it is a very fascinating topic. And as before, I encourage all the listeners and viewers that read that to look at the books, read the stories of real people that went through real challenges and have the courage to be real, just like yourself and myself. And
Yes.
many others, because we are not alone, and that's a good thing. So
That's for
Lynda,
sure.
thank you so much for coming today on this show. It's awesome, always awesome to talk with you. And I'm looking forward to many more collaborations with you.
Me too. Thanks, Christine, for having me. I appreciate you, and keep doing this great work, because it's so important for us to make these connections and to, to discover different things about ourselves to help us become the better people and the people that we're here meant to be.
Yeah, and not to struggle with life alone, because everybody struggles, but at least not alone. There's many people that have similar journeys and are here to help you and assist you. And one recommendation for me personally, if you ever want a book, want to write your story, a women action taker, and want to connect with Lynda, do so, talk to her, and she'll help you get your book to #1. She's awesome. Thanks, Lynda.
Thank you so much, Christine, for having me.
Bye.